I'm going to show you how to replace the floor pans in your old muscle car in just 3 simple steps. Now this is going to be the exact same process that we use at the car restoration shop that I work at.
First, I'll share my process for getting the perfect fitment on the panels. Then I'm going to give you guys a few tricks on how I'm able to weld the panel in without warping it. And finally, I'm going to show you guys how to blend the weld to make it look like it was never there.
So put the license plates and sheet screws aside. We're going to do this right. The first step to replacing these floors is to cut all the junk metal out. It might sound simple, but there's a couple different ways you can do that. Your first option is to use an angle grinder. And what's nice about these is everybody's got one laying around and it can cut up the metal pretty fast. The downsides to these though is it's hard to get them in a tight spot, which is why sometimes I like to use a cutoff wheel on a right angle die grinder. This can be really useful for getting into those really tight spaces. There's a few different things to watch out for when you're cutting the floors up. You want to be mindful of where the cross members go across the body of the car, and you don't want to cut those up if they're in any good of shape. Now when you map out the area that you're going to cut out, you want to make sure that the metal that you're cutting up to is good enough to weld to. So my rule of thumb is to go about 1 inch or 1.5 inches past where all the bad metal is. That way you can be sure that you're going to get a good weld on what's left there. Here I'm using a soapstone to mark out the area that needs to be cut, but don't be worried about cutting exactly on that line because this is just a rough cut that we're going to do just to get the shape of what we need on our new panel. Once I have it all marked out, then I'll go in, I'll cut what I can with the angle grinder and finish up what I can't with the right angle die grinder. Once you have your floor rough cut out, you're going to want to take care of the spot welds that hold the floor onto the cross members that go across the body of the car. You can use spot weld drill bits, which are basically like little hole saws that cut a circle right around the spot weld. Or you can use a Dynaphile belt sander. What's nice about that is they're really quick and it's an easy way to take off the spot welds, but they don't leave the nicest area. So if you're still needing to use certain spots to spot weld later, you're probably going to want to use a spot weld drill bit. So now that I've got all of the spout welds and everything cut out, I'm going to try and take this out as delicately as I can. That's it. Yep. And here she comes. So now that we've got our old floor pan cut out, we can move on to the next step, the fitment. Now this is what most people get wrong when they're putting patch panels in their car. The fitment is everything. If you don't have good fitment, you're not going to have a good weld. If you don't have a good weld, it's not going to be a good patch. So the fitment is key to getting everything right here. And that starts with using our old panel as a template on our new floor pan. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to clamp this up and I'm going to trace around so that we can get a better idea of the exact shape that we need. I'm going to add a little bit extra so that we know we're past the cut mark that we made on the actual car. Now you can see the part that I had to cut off actually overhangs the back floor pan. So I'm just going to need to weld the new front pan up to the edge of this, which is kind of what I expected, but just thought I'd share you guys in on that. Now I'm going to trim this down, then we can set it in the car and see where that leaves us. Now the more I look at this, the more I realize I'm just going to have to replace these cross members. There's not a whole lot of good on here. I mean, that's pretty bad. But I think I'm going to fix that once I get this thing on a rotisserie, so we're not really going to worry about that for right now. Well, I know what you guys are thinking. Why in the world would we cut the floor out of this 2 times? What's the point in doing that? Seems like a bit of a waste of time. What I found in my experience is that it's a lot easier to fit the panel to the hole versus the hole to the shape. So doing it this way ensures that we get perfect fitment all the way around. And I'm just gonna get this thing pretty much set. The way I'm lining this up is I'm using the body lines that go across the old floor pan and seeing where that lines up with the new floor pan, and that helps
really get things set up properly. And normally for this part, I like to use a scribe, but all I have with me is this Sharpie, so I'm just gonna use that. You just gotta keep in mind where your cut line is, like which side of the Sharpie line your cut mark is. Some guys will even like to put sheet screws through where it overlaps with the old floors, just so that it holds the new floor tight down to it to make sure that you get a good mark. I don't like to do that because then you have to fill those holes later on, but it's an option. Now that we have all the final layout done, we can take this off and we can do our final cut. Odds are you're gonna have to take the panel in and out a couple times to fine tune your gap, but once you have that set pretty good, we can start to get to the fun stuff, the welding. Some people would TIG weld this. Personally, I'm gonna MIG weld it just to save on time and materials. But if you really want to TIG weld it, you can knock yourself out. I just don't have time to waste on this. Now, there's nothing wrong with MIG welding. You just have to be careful about how much heat you put in. When I weld, I scatter it out. So I'll put a tack here, and a tack here, and a tack here, and I'll work my way all around, scattering around the heat so that it's not all centralized in one area. And as I'm doing that, I'm going to take a blowgun with shop air, and I'm just going to cool it down as I work it. I'm going to put my first tack right where the panels are fitting really good, so they're flat. You might have to mangle with it a little bit in order to get the panels to be properly aligned to each other. Now that we have one in here, that kind of sets this thing in stone. It's not really going to shift around a ton, but we're able to move it enough to get it aligned in the spots that we need it to. For example, let me bring you in here. So you'll notice here, like the panel is sticking out further than it should be. We're going to have to push this in right here, and we'll have to weld it while I have it pushed in like that, which you're just going to run into these sorts of things on aftermarket panels. They're not going to fit perfect right out the gate. Like this one actually even had this second body line here where there isn't one on the original floors. It's just a part of life with these things. And now you might be looking at this and you're saying, wow, that's a pretty big gap right there. Well, really, it's not so bad because I can pull this up tight. And while I'm pulling it up tight, I'm going to be able to put a tack on there and make that look right. So overall, I'm pretty happy. I like the fit up here. It's super tight here. All along here. I got a little wide on this corner because you see when I push that tight, it's about 1/8 of an inch. It's bigger than I wanted it to be, but it's still workable there. Some guys will even take like the handle of a hammer they don't care about just to pull the panel up tight, kind of like what I'm doing here. So I'm going to push this down, and while I have this pushed down, I'll give it a tack. I'm going to put another tack here. That looks good. Now I'm going to take the shop air, and I'm just going to cool everything down, just like this. The big idea is to keep this thing cool. If it gets too hot, it'll start to warp, and then you're just going to have a mess. So just keep it cool. Take it nice and slow. Be very patient. You can feel it with your hand, and you can see, you know, how flush it is, if it's got to go in, if it's just right. Right about here looks good. So I'm going to throw a tack there. Nice, beautiful. Here actually looks really good. I'm just going to zip one down quick here. You know, even where the metal still looks pretty good, it can be so pitted in there that it just falls apart as you start to weld it. Oh yeah, see, I screwed up here. I was trying to hold it up, but it must have slipped and got away from me because now it's lower than it should be. You can see that new panel's a lot lower than the top panel. So I'm going to have to trim this off and try and bring this up. That looks 100 times better. Okay. Oh, if you lose your one and only, there's always room here for the lonely. Eventually, your welds are going to be spaced about 1/2 inch apart from each other. And this is just when I'll close the gap, whether it's 1 or 2 tacks it takes. If it takes any more than 2, then generally I would put 1 in the middle and keep scattering. For example, between this one and this one over here, I'm not going to be able to fill that with 2. So I'll probably put 1 in the middle then, and then I'll do 1 on either side of that. But the same rules apply. You're still scattering around and doing a little bit over here and then a little bit over there
and then maybe some over here, and then maybe back to here. Like I said before, just keep it all spread out and you'll be good to go. This is coming along pretty good. This corner, I had some issues fitting up. I didn't really realize it till later, but I had to splice this into here and bend these corners back. It's just the joys of working with aftermarket panels. It's what you have to deal with.
One of the things I haven't really mentioned yet is how we're going to deal with this flange that folds over top of the new floor pan. So you can see I have that metal ground down over there, and I have the holes drilled where the old spot welds were. On the new floor pan, I'm going to put some of this self-etching weld through primer on there, and this is going to help protect that area from rust, but it's also going to make it so that we can still get a weld on this flange to the new floor pan. So I'm going to do that right now quick.
So here's what it looks like now that we got it all welded up. You see we have all those spot welds there. That's something I'm going to have to address later, but that's pretty simple to fix. I'm not going to go over that in this video. So we have all the spot welds done, and we also have all of the welding done all around here. So now I can show you guys my process for blending the welds, and then after that, I'm going to go over how I seal this to make sure that this doesn't rust anymore. Look, there's 100 different ways you can do this part, but I like to use a 4-step method, starting with a 36 grit on a roll-lock disc. With this disc, I need to be careful to not gouge any of the base material. I only want to take down the weld with this one, okay? About there is how far you want to get. You don't want to take much more down than that, because we're going to come back later with a different grit and take care of that. So now that I've finished with the 36 grit roll-lock disc, I'm going to get an 80 grit roll-lock disc, and I'm going to go over that, and that's where I'll start to really blend the weld into the panels. Anytime I'm going over the base material, it's really light, extremely light. You don't want to take hardly anything off of there. Okay, now that's 80 grit done. This is kind of my secret sauce right here, this guy right here. I don't know what this is called. This is just like an abrasive wheel. I think it's more for like stripping paint, but I find that it helps blend the 80 grit scratches a lot better than just going straight to a DA. So we're gonna hit it with this next. Let the air compressor catch up a little bit. And you can see that's just blending it right out. That's... Oh, the air compressor's struggling. I hear it. She's angry. Okay, that step is done. Now we can bust the DA out. This is just 80 grit on a DA. It's got an interface pad. You can use an interface pad. You don't need to, but I just have one on there just because that's what's on there. If you want to get a little bit more aggressive and take out some of those deeper scratches, you can take off that pad and get a fresh sheet. This isn't a fresh sheet, so it's not going to do a ton, but it is going to help just take it to that next level. Looks like I had some deeper 80 grit scratches. That's going to be just fine for what this is, but overall I'm happy with that. So this is the finish that it's going to be all the way around. So I'm just going to repeat this same process that I used on the rest of the welds, and then after that I'm going to show you guys what I use to seal the bare metal to make sure that it doesn't rust while I'm still working on this project. Well, I was having some issues with my air compressor, so I had to use the belt sander to grind the welds down. I think I've got all of those issues sorted out now, so I'm going to use the orange blending disc that I was using before and finish this up with some 80 grit on the DA. So now we've got the welds all sanded down smooth, all blended together. To seal it, I'm using this 2K epoxy primer. It's just in a rattle can, so it's super convenient for me. The epoxy primer is gonna seal it up, and it's really good to put on bare metal. That's what we put on all the cars that we work on at the shop. Now. For the record, I am not a painter. I'm a welder. All right. Okay, we're gonna let that flash for a few minutes and then we'll come back and we'll put another coat on that. Also, I should mention the tape lines I put down are just to let me know where I have the surface prepped to, because I didn't sand past that. So that's just kind of for my knowledge, just to know where I'm at. Beautiful. Like I said, I still have to spot weld this onto the cross members. So this epoxy that I'm putting right down really is just temporary, just to keep the rust from immediately flashing on the welded areas. Well, there you guys have it. That's how you replace floor pans in your old muscle car. Now, if you like this video, be sure to check out my last video that I made on a jet ski that I definitely should not have bought. And if you didn't like the video, I'm sorry, you just have bad taste. I don't know what to tell you. You can also check out that video. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one.